Morris Pearl is the chair of Patriotic Millionaires, rich people who actually want to pay more taxes. The big question is why. So your message to Albany is tax me more. Explain to me why you think that's something you should do.
Well, I want to live in a city that has enough money to pay for all of the services that make New York, New York. I depend on all of the people who work in the city that protect us, that work in my granddaughter's school teaching her English and Spanish. And I don't want to live in a city that runs out of money to pay for that stuff. That's not good for me. And of course, it's not good for anyone else either.
So, but how much more should you pay?
I should pay enough so that the city has enough money. They elected a mayor, Mamdani, who wants to get a lot of things done. And that's what the people of the city voted for, and that's what they want.
Not all the people voted for him.
Well,
I mean,
only
half the
did.
people. No, actually, only half the people voted for them.
Okay.
I mean, there were 3 people in the race, and so he actually didn't get a majority. We won. He got a plurality, but in any event, there were people that didn't support him.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Not everyone did. Not everyone did. But enough people did that he's the mayor.
Right.
And he was elected on the basis of the program.
So how much should people like you pay? What percentage should they pay?
Well, I think it's not a percentage. It's enough money that the city has the revenues it needs to pay for all of the things that the mayor and the city council and the state legislature want to do. I don't even think you can think of it as a percentage. Do you want a percentage of income, a percentage of assets, a percentage of real estate? There's lots of different ways to divide up the tax burden among the people, and they have to decide how to do it in the most fair way. But I think the rich people have to pay more of the tax burden that we have in our city.
Look, rich people already pay more of the tax burden. According to statistics, people who earn $1 million make up 1% of New York City. They pay between 37 and 40% of all the taxes. They're already paying for the services for everybody else. So the question is, how much more should people pay?
Well, look, they need to pay. I think we need to pay more. You can divide the statistic any way you want to. The people, the very poorest, they pay 0%. So you could argue the middle class and the upper class pay 100% of all the taxes, and they can't pay any more. But I think we do need to have the richest people among us, the most able to pay more.
So how much do you pay in taxes? What's your percentage?
Percentage of what? My taxable income? I have almost no taxable income. All of my money comes from investments I made years ago. So I have practically no taxable income at all, and I pay almost no income taxes.
So you think you should be paying how much more?
I could pay substantially more, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars more. I really could.
So the President of the United States is upset about the taxing policy of the mayor of New York City. In fact, on Thursday night, he posted that the taxes were destroying New York City, and that the tax policies are so wrong, people are fleeing. His direct words. He says people will leave the city. What's your response to that?
Look, you can look at the statistics as taxes have gone up over the day. The New York State Department of Finance has statistics of part-year income, part-year tax returns. People are moving in and out during the year. People who make a lot of money are moving into the city. The people moving out are the people who are moving to New Jersey and Connecticut, where they also have high taxes, but they have lower rent, lower childcare costs. Those are the people who are losing. People who want to have kids and have families and can't afford to stay in the city. The very rich people, they don't move because of taxes. I mean, we did lose the president himself who moved to Mar-a-Lago, but that's okay. The very rich people live wherever they want. They don't have to move because of taxes.
Yeah, but you see, here's the question. People are leaving the state because of the tax rate. If you take a look at the size of the congressional delegation, it has deteriorated. Numbers have gone down, down, down because people are leaving because we charge so much in taxes, to the point where we now have only 26. We used to have one of the largest delegations. We do not anymore. We have 26 people, and in the next census, they estimate we're going to lose another 2 seats. So people are leaving. Somebody is leaving the city because of the taxes.
Well, yeah, other states are gaining more. That's true.
Texas, Florida, places that don't have high income taxes.
and places that people retire to because the weather is better there. We are New York City. We have the place where everyone wants to go. As they say, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. I think New York is a great place to live, and people are moving in. And yes, more people are moving into other states like California, but people are also moving into New York City.
So how do you feel about the pied-à-terre tax, which would force people who are ultra rich but don't live in the city to pay more taxes?
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a step in the right direction. I think it's clearly a tax that only affects the very rich. Only the very rich people own residences worth $5 million, and especially they don't even live there. So I think it's a fine idea.
But you would want to go further and tax people who earn more than what?
More than $1 million a year? Yeah, I think people who earn more than $1 million a year, who make more than $1 million a year in any way, whether they call it earned income, investment income, whatever kind of income, should pay a little bit more of that in taxes. Yes, ma'am.
So, on the pied-à-terre tax, the President of the United States owns a very large apartment in Trump Tower that would probably qualify for that tax. Do you think the President should pay the pied-à-terre tax?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like everyone else who owns real estate they're not using. I mean, he could move it, he could leave, I mean, he could sell it if he wants to.
But the other thing is that he chose to move out of New York City, so he technically fits in that category. You know, because he
moved to Florida.
He moved to Florida. He owns an apartment. Should he pay a tax?
Well, yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, it could be his son is living there. But yes, I think he should pay the tax the same way as everyone else, sure.
So moving right along, I wonder, you know, theoretically, how much money is enough money to live on?
I think people who have tens of millions of dollars in savings have enough money to live on, sure.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to leave it right now, but our conversations continue right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. We are back with Morris Pearl, chairman of Patriotic Millionaires. I'm curious how you decided to become part of this organization.
I'll tell you, I was in Athens, Greece one day. I was working for BlackRock. I was in charge of helping to figure out how much the Greek banks needed in a bailout back in the financial crisis. This was in 2013. And one day we were doing a due diligence meeting. I was in the top floor executive dining room of a bank headquarters in downtown Athens. And I walked over to the window so people wouldn't see I was taking 2 chocolate puddings from the dessert table. And I looked out the window and I thought I was watching a parade for a moment. And I realized it was not a parade. It was not a holiday. We were working. And I realized it was like a protest or a demonstration, or maybe even a riot moving down the street. And I turned around and I looked back and I thought to myself, am I really doing anything for the people of Greece other than these couple of dozen bank executives whose jobs we were hopefully saving by getting their bank bailed out? And a few months later, I told the people at BlackRock I've done as much as I'm going to do for them, and I've been doing policy and politics work ever since.
But do you have, I mean, is it like a thing that you feel that you're going to make lives better for people, or do you, in reading about you, you make the argument that states with higher taxes provide services in a better way, that they have better police, they have better pollution crime education programs, all kinds of things. Is that true, that higher tax states offer municipal services in a better way?
Well, yeah. I mean, look at, where are the most elite universities in the country? Stony Brook, Berkeley. Those are the high tax places. Look at where people want to live. California, New York is where people are moving in. You don't see a lot of people saying, oh, I want to live in Oklahoma because I can make it big there. People want to live in places where there's vibrant economies, where there's creativity, where there's, people are producing TV shows here in New York, not in a lot of other states with lower taxes. And there's a reason for that.
Well, but here's the question. A lot of people who make a lot of money, people who I'm sure you socialize with, don't want to pay more taxes. So how do you convince them that they should agree with your point of view?
Look, I don't personally want to pay more taxes.
You don't?
Just like I don't.
Then why are you head of the Patriotic Millionaires?
Well, just the same way I don't personally like paying the maintenance fees on my co-op. I don't personally like paying the monthly fees of the club that I'm in. But I do all those things because I want the benefits those things provide. I want to live in a fancy co-op on Park Avenue. I want to be a member of the club. And I want to live in a city that provides all of these things like educational institutions and libraries and safety that make it the kind of city where I want to live. And so I'm willing to pay for those things.
So how do you convince the people that you go to in your club and other places who don't want to pay the taxes that they should pay the taxes?
I convince them that they will be better off. I convinced them they don't want to live in a place that's like Athens, Greece was in 2013 with people marching the streets and protesting. And that a lot of that protesting is for various reasons, but a lot of it is because of the growing inequality. A lot of it is because people seeing a few people getting very, very rich, richer and richer and richer, while they're struggling to get by. And part of that reason is the very rich people like me pay far less taxes than people like you who get a paycheck every week with taxes deducted from it.
So here's the question. If you have this gulf between the very rich and the people who work really hard to make ends meet, at some point, does it lead to a civil war?
It could. It could lead to civil unrest. Now, I don't know if we're going to have a civil war like we did in the 1860s, but we could have civil unrest like we did in Greece while I was there. You know, we could have a kind of a revolution like they had in South Africa in the 1980s. That did not end well for the rich people. So yes, that's what I'm afraid of, is that people are going to give up on democracy and give up on the system. And I don't want to see that. And so I'm trying to do something to change the course of our history so that we don't have that.
Do you think that philanthropy and what millionaires and billionaires do with their money has changed over time?
I think people have gotten more greedy over time in the short term and not looked at the long term. I think the rich people, you know, a century ago, a lot of them looked to the future. People like Carnegie with the Carnegie Endowment and Ford, who started the Ford Foundation. I think we're looking at their grandchildren and their grandchildren's grandchildren's generations. I think now there's a lot of rich people, not all, but a lot, who are really only looking at how much money can I make in the next 3 months.
So is it generational?
I think maybe it is. I think sort of a new thing started in the 1980s. You know, when Michael Douglas wore that shirt with the stripes going sideways and said, "Greed is good." You know, sort of, you know, in the Ronald Reagan years.
The reason I ask about the generational question is because, for example, you have Michael Bloomberg, who's a very charitable person who has his own, you know, series of philanthropies. And then you have people like Musk and Zuckerberg who don't seem to be doing the same kinds of things that he is. So is it a generational thing where they're not as giving, they're more into possessions?
I think maybe it is. I mean, maybe Elon Musk is a special case. I mean, each one is a special case. Michael Bloomberg is a special case. I mean, he's a great guy. You know, I'm not putting words in his mouth. So, you know, I don't really know. But yeah, I think that this new generation, people like Elon Musk, does seem to want to start his own political operation, his own political movement. And I don't think that's the sort of thing that is really good, because I don't think that, you know, the rich people should be using their riches to sort of have their own politics.
So do you think that becoming rich and making a lot of money gives you an obligation to give back?
I think it should. I think it should give you an obligation to give back.
But at what point does it become something that you feel social pressure to do? Or does it become something you feel you should do?
Well, I mean, I think some of rich people never feel social pressure to do anything. I think they should have social pressure, and I think that's why we need, you know, tax policy passed by legislation. I don't think we can depend on social pressure to get people to do things.
So give me an example of a conversation you would have with one of your friends who is wealthy, who doesn't want to pay more taxes, where you try to convince that person that it's an obligation to do that, to pay higher taxes.
Well, honestly, of course, most of my close friends are on my side, of course, since I've been running this group for 10 years or 12 years or so now. But I think what I tell people is that they themselves will be better off if we have a nation with less inequality, if we have a nation with fewer people who are sort of giving up on democracy, if we have a nation with fewer people sort of demonstrating on the streets because they see themselves just unable to get by, and they see themselves unable to support their family and unable to make the next generation the way they were. So I think that's what I tell them, is that they themselves will be better off. So even if you want to be greedy, you should still be in favor of less inequality in our nation.
All right, Morris Pearl, head of Patriotic Millionaires, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And thank you at home for joining us as well.